Yep. Inside, I want to kill myself. We are on an 0-7 run over the last 2 days. After tonight was just complete bullshit. So that's how I'm going to start off this show. Horrible Sunday, 1-5. I don't even know what to tell you about that. I just don't want to do this anymore. I have never seen anything like this, man. With the slump continuing, 2 straight losses, not a good day at all. 0-4. I just have not had a good season, man. What kind of slump that I'm on? The slump continues. I've reached a new peak, actually. I'm gonna burn my Bruins hat, man. I don't know what is going on with the Bruins. March 8th, is that what it is? I don't even know. It's March 9th, I think. Who even knows, man? I don't know what day it is anymore. I don't even know what day it is anymore, man. Back with you after the worst day that I could possibly have. Back with you, as I always am. Until I die, at least. 0-2 yesterday, and yesterday did not go well for me. 0-5. The worst month that I've ever had in my 18 years doing this. I don't know what to even tell you about this anymore. Broke the slump yesterday as the slump discontinues. The slump continues. Somebody fucking kill me, please. I don't even know what I should do at this point other than potentially end it all. What's up, everybody? It's Toad back with you with Toadstool Sports. This is going to be the final and the fourth and final of the conference tournament breakdowns, where I just give out, some opinions on the futures. I don't really do the futures in these, and as I pointed out in my last video, which I should have pointed out earlier, I think that it is actually a better idea to do a rollover approach instead, if you like a certain team, which would be to bet them on the money line for like a smaller amount at first, and then if you win that one, like bet them on the money line in one game, the first game that they play in. Then if they do win, take those winnings, bet all of that on them again in the next game, and then doing it that way, you can choose to stop if they get like a bad matchup or something like that, and you win more money that way if they do make it the whole way, typically. So, those would be my recommendations here, but here I'm just trying to identify, like where I think there might be some value in some of these tournaments. Let's get into it, man. So I did have a couple that I didn't hit. So we're going to do the power conferences primarily here, the Power 5. Is that what they are? Are they 5? Yeah, there are 5, I think. But I'm also going to do the 2 that I haven't talked about yet, which is the American, because that finished yesterday while I was doing the previous video, and I have not hit the Ivy yet. The Ivy has finished up, so we'll talk about the Ivy now as well. Although I believe the Ivy structure didn't change, or we might actually have the odds for the Ivy now. We do. So we'll do the Ivy first, because I've already talked about it. And as I mentioned, unfortunately, so this is the bracket. The Ivy just does a 4-team bracket. The top 4 teams make it. Unsurprisingly, Yale got the 1 seed, Harvard the 2, Penn kind of a surprise getting the 3, and then Cornell, who I think might actually be the 3rd best team in the conference behind Yale and Harvard. They got the 4 seed. But what I pointed out is I believe these games are being played in Ithaca. So that's kind of bullshit as far as let me make sure that that's actually true, though, because if that's true, that is bullshit, because that would mean that Cornell basically gets a home game, which makes them more likely to bounce the 1 seed here. Let me see if that's actually true, though. And this is going to be on ESPNU, ESPN News, and then the final on ESPN2. I guess I'll consult Wikipedia on this just to make sure that that's true. It is indeed true. So Cornell basically gets a home game for as long as they're in this tournament. They get home games, which is some real bullshit. I don't know what else to say about that. I guess Cornell is hosting it. I don't know why these tournaments do this. Like, put it on a neutral site, man. Like, why do you let one of the teams that could potentially be one of the lower seeds in your tournament be the fucking host and get that advantage? Bullshit. But at least what's good for Yale is that Yale just played here and lost, so they're going to know what they did wrong and probably come out with a better effort this time. So at least Yale has that in their back pocket, because Yale is clearly the best team in this conference. But because of the setup of this tournament, they're not that much of a favorite to win this thing. They are the favorite, and rightfully so. They're minus 115. Cornell, because they're playing at fucking home, even though they play Yale in the first game, they're plus 280. Harvard plus 460, Penn plus 600. I'm not going to show the KenPom ratings visually here because what I didn't realize is his conference pages are actually behind the paywall too. So I will recommend buying KenPom if you're at all serious about this, or really just so that you can see the stuff yourselves. I mean, it's like I said, it's like $25 a year, so like why not? Good old Ken Pomeroy, but you can look at his stuff. I look at a combination of him, Bart Torvik, and then Evan Mia. I guess it's Miyakawa is his name. I guess not. I thought it was Evan Maya, but it's Mia. They're like the 3 top college basketball analytics guys, analytics sites. But anyway, looking at the Ivy, KenPom has Yale as the 78th best team in the country. They're the best team in the Ivy. 45th on offense in the country, but they're not the best defensive team in the conference. And in fact, Harvard is the best defense in the conference. And then Penn actually behind them, which is interesting. So Penn, these are actually the top 4 teams in the conference. So just Yale is actually number 1. According to KenPom's rankings, Yale is far and away number 1. Harvard is number 2. And then Cornell is not that far behind as 3. Penn is 4. Penn, more of a defensive team. Kind of balanced, though. Harvard is much more of a defensive team at 113th in defense, which is the best in the Ivy. Yale is more of an offensive team, and then Cornell is extremely lopsided towards offense. They're not as good on offense as Yale, but they're also way worse on defense. So Yale is the better team. They will be a favorite here, but again, it's a road game. So, is there actually value playing Cornell here? I don't know. I mean, the value might actually be on the other side here. It might actually be with one of the defensive teams. Harvard, is probably going to be the favorite here. The value might actually be with Harvard, to be honest, at plus 460, because then you'd be grabbing one of the better defenses here. And, in fact, the best defense in the conference being Harvard. Even though Penn is, I guess, a little bit more balanced, Harvard is just slightly worse on offense. But, that might be the way that I would look if you think there's any value here in this conference at all. I still think Yale should win it, but it's not the greatest setup for Yale here, man. I mean, is there value on Cornell because they're the home team? I guess maybe, because they'll play both games on their home floor. So, that's why they have the second best odds here, like I said. Dirty Sock, what's up? Starlink. Elon, I guess, is good for one thing. Flight to Seattle. Well, at least I think Washington, you should probably be able to, you can probably bet in Washington, I assume. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I don't know. Washington is a kind of a weird state, so I don't know. But that's the Ivy. Don't have a whole lot else to say about the Ivy, but yeah. I mean, it's a short conference, a short tournament, obviously, with just 4 teams in it. So the winner has to win 2 games. All right, let's go to the American Conference. Which is going to be a larger conference bracket here. This tournament starts in 2 days. I think some of the tournaments start tomorrow, so I will talk about those too. So in the American, isn't that great? The bracket that we have here on their site is not full yet. So we were going to consult Wikipedia again for this. Here it is. American Conference. All right. So South Florida did get the 1 seed. They are the best team in this conference, according to KenPom. Tulsa is very close second in the conference, but the teams are different styles. And then Wichita is probably third in KenPom, I would guess, but they did get the 2 seed. Let me take a look here. Looking at KenPom's rankings, South Florida is 51st in the country overall. Tulsa 58th, so they're really close. They're both quite good on offense. Just South Florida is way better on defense than Tulsa is. South Florida is probably the most balanced team in this conference. Interestingly, they play really fast, though. But I think they do that, and they try to crash the glass, like, really hard. This South Florida team could pose a very difficult matchup for certain teams in the NCAA tournament if they get in, depending on who they match up against. Tulsa, not really as good on defense. Wichita is actually pretty balanced. They're not as good on offense as those 2 teams, but they're better on defense than Tulsa is, and they're the 3rd team in the conference, according to KenPom, at 88th. UAB is 4th at 122. Florida Atlantic, 125. And then North Texas, Memphis, believe it or not, is next at 130, and then North Texas at 140. I don't think any of the other teams are really going to do anything in this tournament. Memphis has just been losing constantly, man, even though Memphis is really not that bad. As I keep saying, it's just that I think they're really, really horribly coached. Penny Hardaway is like, dude, he's going to get fired. He's just a horrible, horrible coach. But as you can see here, the bracket structure, Charlotte is like clearly a vastly overseeded team at 5 here. I also think Tulane has been pretty overrated all season. Temple maybe slightly overrated. The thing about Florida Atlantic, they're very underseeded as well. And the thing about Florida Atlantic is I think they were injured for a large portion of the season, but they're more of a complete team right now, I believe. So they could be maybe a way to look in this tournament as well. But it is one of those, wide bracket structures here where if Florida Atlantic was going to make a run, they would have to win a bunch of games in quick sequence here, which is not that easy to do. In Washington, you can only bet them at the casinos. Those Native Americans, man, they got a stranglehold on everything. So you bet my 2 plays then, I guess. I hope they win, man, because my conference tournament stuff hasn't been good, and I don't usually do the thing like the Robert Morris one, which is almost strictly a numbers play, and just fading a team that I think is overvalued, fading a team that I think got way overseeded in Detroit Mercy. Looking at this, I hope South Florida is able to win this thing, and it does set up okay for them on their side of the bracket. Their side of the bracket is not too dangerous, although UAB is an okay team. I think UAB did beat South Florida once this year, possibly at South Florida. Am I right about that? Maybe I'm not right about that. I don't know. Actually, I think I gave out UAB at Tulsa. I think they did win that, but I don't know. Tulsa, they have a more dangerous side of the bracket here. Wichita is actually pretty good. North Texas, they will slow you down and really frustrate you, and FAU, very underseeded as well. Even though I think Memphis is underseeded, I just don't really trust them. I expect that they will get at least a win here, beat Tulane, and then they really should beat Charlotte as well. Charlotte, again, is not very good. In fact, let me look at the rankings here. Yeah, Charlotte's 191 overall in the country, so they're worse than Temple, according to KenPom. They're above the rest of the teams in the conference besides the ones, all the other ones I didn't mention, though. That's how overrated Tulane is. And then the rest of the teams didn't even make the tournament because the bottom teams don't make the conference tournament at all, which didn't leave out any real competitive teams. Let's look at the odds here for this tournament. Where are they? AAC. South Florida actually favored over the whole field at minus 125. I think they are going to win it because their side of the bracket just sets up a lot better. They only have to win 2 games, and they will, even though they'll come into this cold, and that's not good for a team that likes to play fast coming in cold. They might struggle a little bit in the first game, but they will be a pretty decent favorite in that one. As long as they get through that, I think they should be good to win it, but it will be a difficult matchup for them, I think, in the final, though. Whether it's Wichita State or it could be Tulsa there, I'm guessing it'll be one of those two. It's not going to be that easy, but I still think South Florida, they're favored for a reason here. Tulsa has better odds than Wichita, by the way, even though they have to play an extra game, so that's interesting. They're at plus 320, Wichita plus 370, and then UAB's next all the way down at plus 1,700, and Memphis has the next best odds at plus 3,500, North Texas plus 5,500, and FAU plus 8,000, and Charlotte is also plus 8,000. If you want a real long shot, FAU, I guess they would really have to get through a lot of competitive games to try to get through it, so I don't see that happening. I think they will beat Temple. They definitely have a shot to beat North Texas there, especially coming in with momentum, but I think they might make a little bit of a run, and then it might end against Tulsa or something like that. Memphis, again, I see them maybe even making a run to this UAB game, and at some point I think they're going to fizzle out, and their coaching is just not good. But yeah, South Florida, I don't want to say there's value with South Florida at minus 125, but I just don't think I would bet any of these other teams to really get it done. The other side of the bracket is just too cluttered with competitive teams, so I wouldn't do it. I don't know about Hofstra. That one is pretty weak. Northern Colorado, I do like a bit more than that, except for the zigzag. Hofstra, I don't have a good gauge on that game, and they seem to always lose in that tournament. All right. What order do we want to go in for the power conferences here? I want to start with the Big East, I guess, even though the Big East starts a day later than most because it's a smaller conference. The Big East is, the least interesting, though, so let's start with the Big East. Actually, whoops, I did not want to close Wikipedia, though, in case we need it for something. The American Conference, by the way, ESPN News, ESPN Plus, the ESPN family has all the games, and then second round is ESPNU, and then ESPN2 for the next round's championship on ESPN, and the whole thing is being played in Birmingham, Alabama. So UAB actually is playing in their home city. So just keep that in mind. I should have mentioned that earlier. So UAB has like a home advantage here to some extent, which, I think it'll only get them so far, but maybe they'll get, a win out of it. I guess it could be a little bit dangerous for South Florida having to play them in Birmingham, which it does suck. I hate when conferences do that, but that's the way that it is. So, I think they should be more neutral about it. All right, for the Big East, we have, I think the Big East does drop, actually, did they drop anybody? Maybe they didn't, because I see Georgetown in here, DePaul is in here, Butler, Providence, Xavier. No, I think every team is in the tournament, so every team gets a shot. Even the last place team gets a shot to win this whole thing, although really, we know the Big East is very top-heavy. Like, pretty much it's UConn and St. John's at the top, very, very good, and then Villanova is decent and will be a tournament team, and then everybody else is behind that, and no other team is projected to make the tournament. Seton Hall is kind of a bubble team, which, by the way, when you get into these big conferences, we got to start talking about that is a motivating factor. When you have a bubble team like that, now, if they're a favorite, you might not want to play them or anything like that because they're going to be overvalued a little bit, but you pretty much know you're going to get motivation out of them, and in like a futures market, it might make sense, to maybe look towards Seton Hall here. So they're on the side of the bracket. They would have to get through St. John's probably. These games are going to be on Peacock in the early rounds. The later rounds are on Fox and Fox Sports 1. The whole thing is being played in Madison Square Garden, though, and remember, that is one of St. John's home arenas, so that does help St. John's, and it helps UConn as well, because UConn draws a huge crowd at Madison Square, usually, so they do have kind of an advantage in the location as well. Now, UConn pretty much has lost their chance at a 1 seed. I guess if they win this whole thing, they do kind of have an argument, so I guess you might still see UConn being motivated here, because you have to gauge motivation in these big conferences, you know what I mean? Like, St. John's might make an early exit in this thing if they want to just, gear up for the tournament now, you know what I mean? Like, do you care? Like, how much do you care about winning the Big East tournament is the question. Like, do you want to put in a huge effort here just to win this thing, then have to turn around and play, in the tournament, or do you care more about winning the tournament? I think maybe St. John's does care more about that because they had an early exit in the big tournament last year, the NCAA tournament. UConn might have more motivation here, even though I think they're a little bit of an overrated team, but they might have an argument for a 1 seed if they get through here, so they might want that. I also just don't really see them losing early on. Like, I know they literally just lost to Marquette, and they might have to play Marquette in the first game because they will play the winner of Xavier and Marquette. But I don't think they would lose to them again, man. I just don't. I think UConn would beat them in that game. Villanova would have to play the winner of Georgetown and DePaul. Villanova plays slow, so they could be vulnerable right out of the gate, man. Like, a lot of times you see wild things happen in these tournaments. And Villanova, again, because they're in so many close games, there is the potential of them losing. UConn does also play slow. But I just think UConn is enough better than whoever their opponent will be here that I don't really see them losing there. The winner of Providence and Butler, I mean, Providence did give St. John's some problems in their games, so I think St. John's probably doesn't want to see Providence again here. But I also, again, I don't know what the motivation is going to be for St. John's here. Seton Hall will have to get by Creighton. That's not an easy matchup right out of the gate, man. Creighton is not that bad. I mean, they're down for Creighton's program this year, but they're not a horrible team. Ken Baum has them 75th in the country. Looking at what Ken Baum has, he's got Connecticut 11th in the country, St. John's 21st, Villanova 32nd, Seton Hall 52nd, Creighton 75th. He actually has Providence 73rd, so he has them better than Creighton, believe it or not. And then Butler is next at 82nd, Marquette 86th, Georgetown 87th, Xavier 97th, and DePaul 102. So the entire conference is actually basically in the top 100. So, it's still a power conference. It's not a horrible conference. But based on that, Providence might be a little bit of an undervalued team here. But they're on the same side of the bracket as Seton Hall. The bracket, it looks kind of easy for UConn on their side of the bracket, to be honest. I don't see Villanova being that much of a threat. Let's see what the odds are here for the Big East. Where is it? Here it is. Yeah, UConn's favored over the whole field at minus 115. I do think they have the easier side of the bracket. I would not play St. John's at plus 190. They're already in the NCAA tournament. Do you really think St. John's is going to be that intense about, we're going to be a 5 seed versus a 6 seed or whatever in the tournament? Probably not. I don't think Villanova, I don't know, man. Villanova, they just play so many close games. I don't know, man. They're an all right team, I guess. I think they're pretty good on defense, though. UConn does struggle offensively, offensively as well at times, but they're actually pretty good offensively overall. At 28th, UConn, believe it or not, is actually the best offense in this conference still, even though I think they kind of struggle at times versus the real upper echelon teams. They're not as good as those offenses. They're also the best defense in this conference, with Seton Hall being second and then St. John's third. Villanova is a more balanced team. They're top 40 in both. DePaul is actually a very good defense and extremely lopsided towards defense. Creighton's a decent offense and more lopsided towards offense. Butler pretty balanced. Marquette, believe it or not, is heavily defensive oriented. Georgetown is just not that good, but they are balanced. And then Xavier, really just nothing to write home about here. So I don't know. This is a difficult conference to figure out, but I do think UConn probably is going to win it, to be honest. I just don't think they have that much of they don't face really much of a threat until they get to the final. Villanova's at plus 700, Seton Hall plus 1,700, Creighton plus 5,000, Providence plus 6,500, Marquette also at plus 6,500. That just seems weird to me. I think if you really want, kind of the long shot or whatever, maybe Seton Hall's defense carries them through, and the fact that they're motivated because they're on the bubble. I probably do like them against Creighton just because you have a defense versus an offense here. Seton Hall, I'd prefer the defense probably. Seton Hall, if you really want that kind of long shot, maybe they're worth a look here. I don't really see much else. Providence is a real long shot maybe. I do think they're a little bit undervalued. They're a pretty unlucky team this year, to be honest. So I think St. John's might run into them, and Providence has played them competitively both times this year, really. So, I think St. John's is up against it here, but I think UConn is probably going to win the conference. I think they could win it without even, putting in their best effort, to be honest. So, yeah, that's how I feel about that. I think UConn will probably win it. Is there value at a small favorite price on them? Maybe. I also, I would avoid St. John's, though, for sure. They're in kind of a cluster on their side. But like I said, and the motivation is kind of questionable. But yeah, like I said, I think the rollover approach would be better. Although if you're doing that with UConn, you're going to be playing them as a big favorite in a bunch of games. So it's a little bit less enticing to do that. I know. All right, that's the Big East. Let's do what other conferences? I'm going to say Big 12. We'll do ACC next. Which I'll do it in order of how good I think the conferences are. What are they even called now? And they're still called the Atlantic Coast. I was like, are they the American Coast Conference now? No, they're still the Atlantic Coast Conference, even though half of the conference is not even in the Atlantic. So the ACC actually does drop their bottom 3 teams So they dropped, unfortunately, Boston College, Georgia Tech, and Pitt, I think, were the team. No, Pitt got in. Who the fuck missed? Notre Dame missed? No. That is such bullshit, man. Notre Dame is clearly a more competitive team than Pitt, man. I'm sorry. I hate that. I think Notre Dame should have gotten in instead of Pitt. Let me see here. I mean, Ken Bum only has Notre Dame 7 spots higher, but still, Notre Dame almost pulled off some big wins this year. Anyway, you know, this is a pretty top-heavy conference as well, obviously. Duke is the 1 seed here. So they get a double bye. They would have to win 3 games to win the tournament. The top 4 seeds get the double bye, so that's Duke, Virginia, Miami, and North Carolina. I think there's a big drop-off from Duke to everybody else, and then even from Virginia down to the next grouping, I think there's somewhat of a drop-off there. Clemson fell to the 5 seed, and then, in order, we got Louisville, NC State. Florida State actually kind of dangerous as an 8 seed there. California has been discussed as kind of a bubble team. Then we got Stanford. SMU has really fallen off. SMU, I mean, they're considered to be a tournament team still, sort of, right now, but kind of a bubble team. They don't need to win this tournament here, but, you know, if they should beat Syracuse, and then if they beat Louisville, I think maybe that solidifies their case. I don't know, though, man. I don't like SMU. I don't think they're that good, to be honest, even though they're an efficient offense, I think. I just don't think they're that good. And then Virginia Tech, Wake Forest down here. I mean, Virginia Tech, they're actually somewhat competitive teams there. And Stanford, by the way, is the 10. I forgot about them there. And Pitt, the last team that got in. Stanford is all of a sudden, they've arrived on the bubble as well. NC State's been falling down, so they kind of need to get a win too. And you're going to have probably if Stanford I think should beat Pitt. And then if they do that, they'll be up against NC State right away. And that's going to be kind of a bubble sort of determining matchup. But I think Stanford kind of needs it more. I think NC State might still get in even if they don't. But I don't know. Their resume is questionable. And then on the other side of the bracket here, you know, Florida State, like, they're way under the radar, I think. Cal, I don't really trust Cal. I know Cal, considered to be a bubble team, might have the motivation there, but I think Florida State might get that one. We'll see what the odds are when these games start. I think this tournament starts tomorrow, but with the opening round games. And then, you know, Virginia Tech was a bubble team for a while, kind of isn't anymore, but teams could make a run and put themselves on the bubble too, you know what I mean? And they kind of have winnable games here. It's just they're all kind of competitive against Wake Forest, Clemson, North Carolina, who is now going to be without Caleb Wilson for the rest of the season. So that is a drop. North Carolina's definitely, you know, they've faced a drop-off without him, but the drop-off hasn't been as steep as you might think. But I don't know, man. I would still be kind of surprised if Duke doesn't win this thing. Duke is just kind of far and above the best team in this conference. But, you know, they're already going to get a 1 seed, so the motivation could come into question a little bit. But they're minus 310 to win this conference. Duke is. That's just how much better they are than everybody else in this conference. And they only have to win a few games. Like, I highly doubt they lose to the winner of FSU and Cal. And then they might wind up in another rematch with UNC. Even if it's not UNC, whoever it is, I don't think Duke loses that either. And then in the championship, you know, I don't even know if Virginia's going to get through their side of the bracket. Yeah, I mean, it's very, very tough to see Duke losing. Even if they don't even bring their best effort, it's tough to see them losing. Virginia's at plus 700 as the second best odds. Louisville plus 1,300. Miami plus 1,700. North Carolina plus 2,500. Clemson plus 3,500. Then you get into the real long shots. Well, North Carolina State, NC State plus 5,000. FSU plus 10,000. And then every other team is lower odds than that. So as far as, like, you know, if you want like a long shot to win the whole thing, I don't even see it. Like, I would avoid it completely. I don't really see Duke losing. I don't think there's really that much value in Virginia. Louisville, they just have not proven that they can beat teams that are better than they are. They're extreme high variance 3-point shooting, so if they get hot, I guess they could make a run here, but I just don't even see it. And I don't think Miami is really as good as people think they are, and they have a first-year coach too. So this, experience starts to matter in games like this. So I wouldn't really want anything to do with Miami either. North Carolina, I just think they're overrated too. I don't know how trustworthy they are. If you want like the real long shot, I mean, Clemson, they've kind of been here, done it before. They play defense, they play slow. They're more kind of equipped to sort of play in a tournament environment. So the real long shot there for them, maybe NC State. NC State, they've had really good performances, like where they destroyed North Carolina and stuff like that, but they've also lost games they shouldn't lose. They're just a very, very unpredictable team, but they have Will Wade. He's an experienced coach, just not with this specific team. And then, Florida State, somewhat dangerous, I would say. But I don't know. I'm rambling here. I don't see much value in the futures market in this conference. Like I said, if you want, if you think there's value on some teams like maybe NC State or Louisville or something like that, it might make more sense to just focus on their individual games, which I said anyway, like the rollover approach. You could use that, or even don't even do that. Just focus on the individual games and play them that way. But SMU going to be a pretty motivated team here. Louisville is already going to be in the tournament, so Louisville, their motivation might get called into question a little bit here. I think the teams that are going to give more motivation in this one are going to be some of these lesser teams that are kind of considered to be on the bubble. Maybe even Clemson, because they've fallen off so much. Maybe they don't consider themselves to be totally safe. But Cal, with them, I just don't think they have a great matchup here. And they're in an unfamiliar environment, so I don't know how much I trust these newer ACC teams that are the Pacific Coast teams, you know what I mean? This whole thing is being played in, where the hell is it being played? Charlotte. So, that's also kind of BS, because obviously that helps Duke and North Carolina and NC State, I guess. Wake, maybe. Being played in North Carolina, it's kind of, I think this tournament's always somewhere in North Carolina, though. It's just kind of ridiculous. But Duke and UNC, they're going to have massive crowds showing up here. So that does help those two teams. So that's something to take into consideration as well. The whole tournament's going to be on the ESPN family, ACC network, then ESPN, ESPNU, ESPN2, all the way up to, the ESPN and ESPN2 in the championship and semifinals there. Not a whole lot else to say about this, but, probably talking about it too much. But, yeah, I think, again, the teams that are kind of, that might give you extra motivation here, the teams that are really kind of just smack on the bubble right now, like Stanford, SMU, NC State maybe, and they're all kind of on the same side of the bracket too. Cal, I would say the same thing, but I just think they draw a bad matchup right away. And then, I don't know. And then Stanford, again, we don't know how these teams are going to be, the Pacific Coast teams playing in this tournament. Even SMU, because they haven't been in the ACC that long, it's kind of a weird location and tournament for them to be in either, So, yeah, and as far as, the absolute lowest seeds in the tournament, maybe Virginia Tech. Let me look at KenPom real quick to see what the ratings actually say. KenPom's got Duke #1 in the entire country, of course. Just really, really good on both sides of the ball. Obviously, elite. Virginia, actually quite balanced, although better on defense than offense. Second best team, 20th overall in the country, 16th on defense. He's got... Actually, he has Louisville as the second best team in the entire conference, believe it or not, then Virginia. Louisville, much better on offense, not quite as good on defense. It's just, again, I don't know, man. They just haven't shown that they can beat good teams. But Virginia has faced, not the strongest schedule either, so I don't know. And then there's a whole grouping after that with Miami 29th, North Carolina 30, Clemson 38, NC State actually at 36. Then there's a little bit of a drop-off after that to SMU 43rd, Virginia Tech 56th, Stanford 59th, Florida State 65th. So, none of these teams are really bad. We're talking about a power conference again here. The worst two teams, KenPom, rating-wise, actually the worst three all got left out. So that according to KenPom, the right three teams actually missed. But BC and Georgia Tech were way worse than the rest of the teams. It's a larger conference, so I don't really want to, go through all of it. But Cal is actually much more defense-oriented. SMU, much more offense-oriented, like I said. So those are kind of the more imbalanced teams in the conference, if you want to call it that. NC State, also much more offense-oriented, Clemson, like I said, is more of a defensive team, but they're pretty solid, and I prefer defense over offense, as you know. But, yeah, Virginia Tech has a lot of balance, and they're not a bad team, so out of any of those teams, I could see maybe them being able to make some sort of run in this thing, maybe. They've shown competitiveness against some of the better teams. So, yeah. All right. That's the ACC. What else we got here? Let's go to, we got to do the Elite Three conferences now, if you want to call them that. Let's start with the SEC. Southeastern Conference. Here we go. This one doesn't start tomorrow either. This is one of the ones that starts Wednesday, I guess. All right. So this one's entirely being played in Nashville, so you might have a little bit of a location edge for Tennessee and especially Vandy, who is a Nashville school. So those are the 5 and 4 seeds here, respectively. This whole thing is on the ESPN family as well, SEC Network, ESPN, for pretty much all the games. I believe the entire conference gets into this tournament, so it's a structure where it's 4 games get played in every round instead of 2, so it's like, not one of those stupid wide brackets, which I think is better. But they give basically the top teams get a double bye into the quarterfinals. So that would be Florida number 1, obviously. Then Alabama got the 2 seed, Arkansas 3, and Vandy 4. Although I think Tennessee is a legit team, man. I will tell you that. And again, you got to look at motivation here. Now, what does Florida have to do to get a 1 seed? That's one thing to keep in mind here. Like, if they don't win this entire thing, are they going to get dropped from the 1 seed? I don't know. Obviously, if they do win this, I think they will almost definitively get a 1 seed if they win the SEC. If they don't, I think it's more in question. So maybe Florida will have motivation for that reason. I believe they did win it last year, so I guess their coach, Golding, kind of has a history of, let's win this thing. Because although I guess they were fighting for a 1 seed last year too, but kind of the same thing here. So Florida might have enough motivation in this thing. Alabama, Arkansas, teams like that might not have motivation as much here. Plus, I don't like teams that are too heavily focused on offense and not on defense, but they know they're going to be in the tournament, as probably 4 or 5 seeds, whatever they're going to be. Vandy, I'm not so sure. Like, they pretty much know they're going to be in the tournament, but, I don't know if they're going to be an unmotivated team here, especially playing in their home city. Tennessee, they're going to be in the tournament too, but, we'll see. It looks like we're almost definitely headed for a Tennessee-Vandy matchup, but it would be interesting if that doesn't happen because Auburn would need to get through Tennessee if they're going to make a run, and we know Auburn is that bubble team that everybody hates, and they got the 12 seed here, so there is the potential of the SEC getting like 11 teams into the tournament, which would be absolutely insane. But Auburn, they're going to be a motivated team, man, to try to get into the tournament. So I think you're going to see motivation out of them. Oklahoma kind of considered to be on the bubble, too, as an 11 seed. Like, just recently, they kind of started appearing on the bubble. Texas is not totally solidified in being in the tournament either. And really, Texas A&M isn't either, and they're the 6th seed here. Texas is the 10. I think Texas is dangerous, though. Texas is a pretty undervalued team. Bring up what Ken Baum has. I know he has Texas as a very good offense and not so much on defense. Actually, in fact, outside of the top 100 on defense. Let me see. He's got Texas 33rd overall in the country. So in the conference standings, he has Florida number 1, Alabama 2, Vandy 2, believe it or not. Vandy actually pretty balanced between offense and defense, believe it or not. They're top 27 in both. And ahead of Arkansas and Alabama because those teams just aren't very good on defense, even though they're pretty elite on offense. He's got Alabama third, Arkansas, or excuse me, no, he has Tennessee third. They're actually more balanced as well. Very good on defense, not horrible on offense. Yeah, so believe it or not, his rankings, KenPom goes Florida, Vandy, Tennessee, then Alabama, then Arkansas, then Kentucky. Very interesting. Then Georgia, Texas, Texas A&M, then Auburn, then Oklahoma, then Missouri. So, yeah, I think I got that right. So those are, he doesn't let you sort it looking at just the conference view. So that's pretty interesting, man. So something to keep in mind there. And then every team is inside the top 100, including Mississippi State, who's exactly 100. But, there is definitely a steep drop-off to the bottom three, which are Mississippi State, Ole Miss, and South Carolina, but not in that order. But the rest of the conference is actually better than that. Believe it or not, last seed LSU was actually considerably better than those teams, power rating-wise. But will they get through Kentucky? Probably not. I mean, Kentucky probably has motivation here as well because they're not totally secure in their tournament setting either. Missouri, like I said, is a little bit overvalued, I think. So I could see Kentucky probably beats LSU, and then, I think Kentucky gets through Missouri. Missouri, kind of an overseeded team. They're seeded higher than Kentucky, but Kentucky's actually the considerably better team there. And then, Florida, I don't know. We'll look at the odds in a minute. We'll see what happens. And then Tennessee and Vandy, both undervalued teams here, man. So one of them could potentially get here. One of them could potentially actually even beat Florida. It wouldn't shock me if that happened. Again, I think Alabama and Arkansas might be vulnerable because they know they're in the tournament. I don't know how much they care about seeding, really. Georgia is more of a bubble team. A&M is more of a bubble team. Texas as well. So one of those teams could get through this thing and make some sort of run here. Georgia, problem with them is they play super fast as well. So Georgia, Alabama, Arkansas kind of all do that. Texas doesn't really play as fast, but they're actually pretty bad on defense, even worse than these teams, but they're really good on offense, which is bizarre. But yeah, I think Texas, could potentially go on a run here. I wouldn't be shocked if they beat Ole Miss. They should, but wouldn't be shocked if they beat Georgia as well and get to this game. I wouldn't totally be shocked if Texas really makes, a multiple game run here, a few games here. It wouldn't really shock me if A&M does it as well. They're more of a fast-paced team, too. It's just kind of crazy. And then Oklahoma should probably at least beat South Carolina here. And it would be a pretty competitive matchup between them and A&M. We could have a lot of chaos in some of the early rounds of this tournament, man. And Auburn, like I said, they're also a really undervalued team, and they really need to win. Let's see what the odds say in this tournament here. Where are we looking here? SEC. I know I'm not watching the Big 12, the SWAC game that's on right now. Florida's minus 180 to win the tournament, so they're actually favored over the whole field. Arkansas plus 600. I don't really see much value there. Alabama plus 750. Don't really see that either. Vandy plus 1,200. Tennessee plus 1,700. There might even be more value in a couple of these long shots like those teams that are undervalued. I think just generally underseeded. Georgia plus 3,500, Kentucky plus 4,500, A&M plus 5,000, Texas is plus 10,000, 10 to 1, and Missouri is also plus 10,000. Auburn all the way at plus 15,000, man, and Oklahoma's plus 12,500. Auburn is a serious long shot, but maybe Auburn in one of these individual games, maybe it makes sense to try to grab them because they're going to be motivated. Them going up against a team like Tennessee, they play slow, so they get involved in some close games. Auburn is one of those fast-paced teams, though, so they might get frustrated playing a slow team. I don't know. It's a really interesting tournament. I just don't know if there's a whole lot of value really in most of these teams here. These teams are all on the other side of the bracket from Florida, though, so Florida is actually on the side of the bracket where a lot of the undervalued teams are, really. Tennessee, Vandy, like some of the better underseeded teams. Kentucky as well. Even Auburn. So, I could potentially see Florida going down here. I I don't know, man. Something about Tennessee, maybe worth like a long shot type of thing on Tennessee because defense can kind of carry you through some of these tournaments. But of course, you're dealing with Rick Barnes, who I don't know how many times has Rick Barnes won the conference tournament. I don't know. I know he has a thing where he never makes the Final Four in the big dance, but I don't know about the conference tournaments. But I don't know. We'll see what happens here, man. And then the other side of this bracket, I could see some, weird team coming out of the second side of the bracket for sure. Something almost tells me Texas could be the team that kind of gets through this thing. I don't know. Some crazy run there. It's going to be an insane tournament, man. We'll see. But, maybe Florida, because they are motivated to get the 1 seed, maybe they do win. Maybe they do still win it. And they are a very, very good team. Like, they're pretty much elite. So, yeah. All right. Then we got, we'll go to the Big Ten here, which does start tomorrow. Big Ten, they start tomorrow. They have 18 teams in their tournament, which is absolutely outrageous. Every team makes the tournament. And then, I think every team makes the tournament. And then, they're the last tournament to finish. Their last game is on Sunday, and it ends like right before the brackets come out, which is insane. So the brackets basically have to be done pretty much before they even know who's going to win the conference, pretty much. So that could get a little weird. There were a few conferences that finished on Sunday. I think the Atlantic 10 is one of those teams. This one, I think the Big I think the Big 12 and the SEC both finish a day earlier, I want to say. I don't know. I forget. I know the Big 10 is always like the last one that finishes, though. Maybe the Big 12 does finish on Sunday as well. I think, a couple of the other teams, like some of the other conferences finish earlier in the day on that day. I think maybe even the American does. I don't know. And I think the Ivy actually might as well. I think the Ivy might have kind of a Sunday morning type of deal there, too. I think they do Saturday, Sunday on the final weekend. All right. Let's, what was I going to say? Oh, I think the American East does something weird like that, too, where they, like, play their final, like, a week after the rest of the tournament or something. I don't know. Anyway. Okay, this bracket is not filled, so, okay, that's just great. The whole thing is going to be on Peacock, Big Ten Network, CBS. That's kind of the family that Big Ten has. They actually have Fox Sports as well. So I don't know. Or Fox Sports has the Big Ten. All right, let's see what the tournament structure is here. We know Michigan's the 1 seed. Let me see. They wrapped up the 1 seed quite a while ago. Michigan's the 1 seed. Nebraska actually got the 2. Michigan State 3. Illinois got the 4. Wisconsin got the 5. UCLA the 6, Purdue 7, Ohio State 8, Iowa fell all the way to the 9 seed, and then Indiana the 10, and then all the rest of the teams that probably aren't going to really make a run here. We'll see, though. I mean, as far as the rest of these teams are concerned, I think Oregon is not as bad as people think they are at the very least. Northwestern also is not. Those are 2, I think, kind of undervalued teams. Washington kind of is as well. The rest of these teams, I just don't really see it. And then, of course, you have Indiana being squarely on the bubble right now. So they do need wins. Ohio State probably would be, Ohio State probably needs to get 1 win at least to not be in danger here. But Iowa, I think Iowa is pretty safe to get into the tournament, but they're going to have to at least not lose, to one of these worst teams here. That would really hurt them. Iowa, if they wind up playing Ohio State, we'll see. I think Ohio State's pretty securely in the tournament. Iowa should be as well, so I don't know if there's going to be a huge amount of motivation there one way or the other. I don't know. And then I think Illinois and Purdue, I think, are actually kind of undervalued teams in this tournament. And then UCLA, they've shown a very, very severe home road dichotomy where it seems like UCLA only is able to win at home and in Pacific Coast games. And whenever they leave the Pacific Coast, they don't do well. And, of course, this game is not on the Pacific Coast. It's, in fact, in Chicago this year. So that is going to help Illinois probably. That means Illinois is going to have kind of a home crowd here probably in vast amounts for this tournament, and Northwestern as well. So we might see some bigger crowds for those two teams that kind of get a little bit of a home advantage here in this tournament. As far as, what KenPom has to say about the Big Ten, of course, he has Michigan as the best team in the conference. They're just elite, man. Second overall, and they're top 4 in both offense and defense. He's got, believe it or not, Illinois is the second best team in the conference, and number 1 overall in offense, and not horrible on defense, really, at 26. Third best team in the conference he has as Purdue. Very efficient on offense, second in the country, but not so good on defense. So that's kind of the knock on Purdue. But I think Purdue's not as bad as people think they are. So they could be a little bit dangerous here. They're, of course, very experienced coach, that whole thing. Then Michigan State is next at 9th in the country. Then Nebraska at 12th. So Nebraska probably a little bit overseeded there. Michigan State, actually both of those teams are top 10 defense. Michigan State is okay on offense. Nebraska really not that good on offense, believe it or not. And then after those teams, there is a bit of a drop-off down to Wisconsin, who would be next in overall rating. Wisconsin much better on offense than defense. They actually play fast now, where I know we're used to Wisconsin being the old Wisconsin, playing slow. Then, believe it or not, he has Ohio State 26th in the country. Actually, he has Iowa 24th and very balanced. Then Ohio State also, Ohio State's more of an offensive team, but he's got Ohio State 26th in the country, so they should absolutely be in the tournament. And then UCLA 28th, so, those teams a little bit underrated maybe as well. UCLA, believe it or not, better on offense and defense this year fairly significantly, which I'm not used to. Indiana at 41st in the country, not horrible either, and fairly balanced Indiana team. Then, believe it or not, the next team ratings-wise after that is Washington, then Northwestern at 54 and 66 respectively. Then he's got Minnesota after that. They're a slow team, nothing special really, but could frustrate teams that want to go fast. USC at 77th in the country, but I don't know, man. I think USC is just, they look like they're kind of a dead team after they lost Baker Mazar and whatever. They seem to be in turmoil in USC, so I don't love them here. Washington could bounce them right away. I think Washington is an undervalued team here, man. So we could see some crazy things happen here. Northwestern probably is going to beat Penn State and have to play Indiana right away. That could be an interesting game. I think Indiana did just have a close call against them, or maybe even lost to them not that long ago. So Indiana might be equipped enough to beat them this time. Both of those teams are undervalued, I think, but you could see Indiana maybe get that game. And then, I think Purdue probably makes a run here, man. As long as they can win their first game, even if it is against Indiana, who is very familiar with them. But, Purdue is actually probably going to be the favorite over Nebraska. And remember, they actually won at Nebraska this year, although, again, that might mean Nebraska might be able to make some adjustments there. But I think Purdue is actually better than Nebraska, so I could see Purdue definitely getting to the semifinals here. And then, maybe Purdue worth a look here, maybe making a run, and maybe Illinois is worth taking a look at here. Those would probably be the two teams that I would look at in this tournament. Maybe Ohio State, actually, to be honest. They're a severely undervalued 8 seed, I think. It's going to be a difficult matchup between them and Iowa, though. But I don't know. Can Ohio State really beat Michigan? I don't know, man. Michigan, I think even as long as Michigan, I don't know, man. Can Michigan lose right away and still get a 1 seed? Probably they can, to be honest. So, at some point you got to start questioning the motivation a little bit with some of these teams that have, wrapped up a 1 seed here. And Michigan, by the way, I haven't mentioned it at all, but Michigan has lost one of their best bench players. They lost him a few games ago. Kason, I think is his name. I forget his name. I want to say it's LJ Kason or something like that, whatever his name is. So he was one of their better bench players, and he's gone, which is very unfortunate for Michigan. It's not, one of their top-level players, but still that does hurt Michigan's depth. So that is something to keep in mind. He's not going to be back. So something to keep in mind there. We do have some teams with injuries, which, of course, we're going to have some of the most serious ones are in the Big 12, which will be the last conference I'm going to talk about. Michigan is minus 125 to win this whole thing. Illinois at plus 440. Michigan State plus 700. Purdue plus 900. Nebraska plus 1,200. Wisconsin plus 2,000. UCLA plus 4,000. I wouldn't trust UCLA in a non-Pacific environment here. Iowa plus 6,500. Ohio State all the way down at plus 10,000, probably because they have to get by Michigan. Indiana plus 17,500. Then there's a real drop-off. Northwestern is at plus 30,000, and so is Washington. And actually all the rest of the teams are basically the extreme long shots. You know, I would say maybe Purdue at 9-1 because they avoid Michigan for as long as possible. Maybe one of these teams can bounce Michigan, and then maybe it sets up all right for Purdue. You know, that might be it. You know, I don't know about Illinois at plus 440. Illinois is very, very good, though. You know, like I said, according to KenPom, the analytics love Illinois. KenPom has them as the 5th best team in the country. And a lot of their losses have been very close losses and overtime losses. So Illinois is probably better than their record would tell you they are. And again, Purdue, I don't know why Purdue keeps losing at home. That's kind of the problem. They've lost at home to, like, the upper echelon teams that they play. Like, they've lost to Michigan at home. They lost to, they did just lose to Wisconsin as well. They lost to, at home as well, I believe. They lost to Michigan State at home, and they lost to, who else did they lose to at home? Illinois, Michigan. Yeah, Michigan State and Wisconsin. So, like, the other top teams of this conference all beat Purdue at Purdue. But maybe Purdue would, make some adjustments that actually beat them. Purdue's not going to have to play more than half of those teams, right? The only one of those teams they're actually going to run into in this tournament, potentially, probably, would be Michigan State if Purdue gets there. So they avoid everybody else besides Michigan State. So, yeah, I think Purdue at 9-1 might be the way that I'll look as maybe like a value play here, or, doing the rollover thing again, rolling them over game to game. That might be the way I would look in this tournament. All right. And then we have the final one is the Big 12. And then I'll get out of here. Going a little bit over an hour for these. So this is, these are the big conferences. Big 12 does start tomorrow. As far as this tournament is concerned, they did fill theirs out, so there you go. This whole tournament is ESPN family, ESPN Plus for some of the earlier games, ESPNU and 2, and then ESPN for the rest of the games. So in the Big 12, of course, Arizona got the 1 seed, wherever the hell they are. They get so the 1 through 4 get the double bye in this conference tournament. By the way, yeah, the same thing in the Big 10, by the way, there's a triple bye for the top 4 teams. As I showed you there, it's one of those, like, I'll call it like a double wide bracket, which I think is maybe a little bit better than just the wide bracket. The Big 12 does it a little bit differently, with the top 4 seeds get a double bye. The next 4 seeds get the single bye, and then the rest of the teams all have to play in the opening round, which kind of makes sense as well. So the double byes go to Arizona, Houston, Kansas got the 3 seed, and then Texas Tech got the 4. And of course, one thing to be aware of with Texas Tech is JT Toppin is not coming back. He's missed 4 games now, and I believe Texas Tech has now lost 2 games in a row. So that injury seems to be catching up to them a bit. They were playing well without him the first couple of games. They blew out, some inferior teams, but since then it hasn't been as good for Texas Tech. So that injury does matter. So that downgrades Texas Tech a bit. And then, of course, BYU, who fell all the way to the 10 seed in this conference. BYU is without Richie Saunders for the rest of the season. He's been out for a bit longer. So I think Toppin has missed 4 games for Texas Tech. I think Saunders has missed about the same for BYU. He went down a little bit before Toppin did, and that has hurt BYU. He's like their second best player after Debonsa. So that has hurt BYU. I think BYU has seen the worst drop-off, even though he's not even their top player. BYU has seen a big-time drop-off since then, man. Although I know they did just beat Texas Tech in their final game. But, yeah, BYU, it's very, very hard to gauge how good or not so good BYU is at this point. BYU is still going to make the tournament. I mean, they're projected to be like a 6 seed or a 7 seed, so they're not really in danger here. They draw Kansas State right away. Kansas State's been a mess. They fired their coach. BYU should get through that game. Let me see. This whole tournament, by the way, is in Kansas City. So, I guess, I don't know if that really helps, Kansas or Kansas State at all, wherever Kansas State's playing BYU, like I said. I don't know. Maybe a little bit more of an edge for Kansas than anybody else there, but I don't know. So, yeah, keep that in mind. The whole thing is in Kansas City. But, yeah, I expect BYU to get that game, but then they're going to run into a team that's going to slow them down in West Virginia, who drew the 7 seed here. As, West Virginia, West Virginia is slowing a fast-paced team like BYU down. West Virginia could be kind of dangerous. They play extra slow with the North Texas coach who came over there. That's, his regime now there. And they're kind of a bubble team, sort of, West Virginia. So if they're able to make some sort of little run here, they could be dangerous, man. They definitely could beat BYU. Don't know if they would really be able to get through Houston. Houston with Kelvin Sampson does seem like they do try to win this tournament most of these years. And so does Iowa State. I don't know. I haven't mentioned Iowa State yet. They fell all the way to the 5 seed. I think they're a pretty undervalued 5 seed, man. Like I think they do probably win their opening game against the winner of Baylor and Arizona State. Of course, they should win that. And then I think they probably beat that undermanned Texas Tech team, too, to be honest. Even though Texas Tech has been good, we don't really know how much to downgrade them. So I think Iowa State could definitely make a run, and they've shown that they want to win this tournament in the past as well under Otzenberger, whatever their coach's name is. TCU could be super dangerous. They've beaten some really good teams this year, played really well against some really good teams, too. I think they either have wins or close games. I know they have a really close game against Michigan early in the season. I think they actually beat Florida, I want to say. So TCU's all over the place. TCU, 6th seed in the tournament here. They, they're a bubble team right now, so they're going to want to win some games here, man. They should beat the winner of Oklahoma State and Colorado, the 14-11. Shouldn't be a problem for TCU there, although Oklahoma State probably wins that, I would imagine. I think they are better than Colorado. TCU did have a close game against Oklahoma State the last time, but I think they get through that. Maybe they even make a run. I don't know how much I trust 3-seed Kansas here because of, it just seems this turmoil there with, Peterson, sometimes not playing. It seems like he is playing now and wanting to play, but Kansas has actually had some of their best games with him not even playing. Like the game where they gave Arizona their first loss, which I gave out on the show as a play. Peterson wasn't even playing in that game. So I don't know, man. That Kansas team, they're pretty unpredictable, to be honest. And then we have Cincinnati got the 9 seed. They're a very interesting case. And they wind up, they get an easy matchup out of the gate against Utah, which they should win against the 16 seed. 16 teams make the tournament. I think the whole conference does. And then they get an overseeded UCF, who I don't think is that good. UCF is pretty likely in the tournament, but Cincinnati, we know they've kind of put themselves on the bubble a little bit here. I think they could definitely beat UCF. Cincinnati's a slow-down team, Cincinnati, they play fast, but they play really good defense, So UCF, I think, also plays fast-ish. Let me look real quick. But, yeah, I think Cincinnati could give them some problems, man. Cincinnati would actually probably be favored in that game. I think they're rated above UCF here. UCF is a fast-paced team, like I said, and not good on defense. Cincinnati's the much better defense, but the significantly worse offense. And Cincinnati actually does play kind of a mid-tempo, so I think they would probably slow it down. Now, as far as Ken Palm's ratings are concerned here, he's got Arizona 3rd in the country, top 7 in both offense and defense. They're the best team in this conference, obviously. Houston at 6th in the country is 2nd in the conference. No surprise there. Very, very good on defense, a little bit worse on offense. Iowa State 7th in the country is the 3rd best team in the conference. Like I said, they're a little bit underseeded as a 5 seed. And very good top 10 defense and a little bit worse on offense. Texas Tech is a top 10 offense, but not great on defense. 17th in the country. They are still rated 4th in the conference, according to Ken Palm. But, again, you got to factor in that injury, so they're probably a little bit worse than that. Then Kansas is next at 19th in the country. Top 10 defense, but outside the top 50 on offense. Then he's got BYU next, 25th in the country. But again, you got to factor in the injury there too. And like I said, they're very lopsided towards offense. What else we got here? Then the next team after that is Cincinnati, believe it or not. So Cincinnati, Ken Baum has them as like the 7th best team in this conference or something like that. Yeah, or 7th or 8th, whatever it is. And very good on defense. Like I said, almost a top 10 defense, just not good on offense. And then after that, he actually has TCU as the next best team. They're really good on defense, too. Top 20 on defense, just not as good on offense. Fairly bad on offense, to be honest. Not as bad as Cincinnati, but those defenses, that translates to tournament environments. So something to keep in mind there with those two teams. Then I know I still haven't even mentioned UCF. I think UCF is next after that. Then West Virginia just a little bit behind that, 53rd and 57th in the country, respectively. Then, actually, I forgot, Baylor's actually 48th in the country, believe it or not. So, actually, he has Baylor ranked ahead of UCF. My mistake. So, it's Baylor, then UCF, then West Virginia, then Arizona State, then Colorado, then Oklahoma State. Then there's a big drop-off. Kansas State and Utah, both outside the top 100. So, all that to keep in mind there. So, yeah, Baylor, Baylor, Arizona State, those are both okay teams. Baylor probably does get that win, but I don't think they're going to beat Iowa State, man. And I think they did give Iowa State a close game the last time they played. So I think Iowa State gets through that. I think there is going to be some value with Iowa State here, to be honest. They're a very dangerous team. They would run into Arizona before the championship, though. And then on the other side, this other side of the bracket really looks like it's Houston's to lose, to be honest. I like Cincinnati to make a little bit of a run. Probably would not be able to get through Arizona, although how secure is Arizona in getting a 1 seed in the tournament? I don't really know. Could Arizona afford to lose to Cincinnati and still get the 1 seed? Probably not, but you might have a super motivated Cincinnati team there. And then again, on the other side, TCU, Kansas could be an interesting one. Houston, Houston probably gets through the side of the bracket. So maybe there is some value in Houston. Let's take a look here. They have the softer side of the bracket, the feminine side of the bracket. Arizona is actually an underdog against the field. They have the best odds to win at plus 115. Houston plus 210. Iowa State plus 650. Kansas plus 850. Texas Tech plus 1700. So the 4 seed has significantly worse odds than the 5 seed, like I told you. BYU plus 5,000, so there's a big drop-off there. TCU and Cincinnati both plus 8,000. West Virginia, believe it or not, has the same odds as UCF at plus 25,000. Then, I don't really see the rest of these teams making much of a run there or much of an impact there. Let me see here, especially because those teams have to play extra games. So, yeah, I think I stand by what I said there. I think probably the... if there's any value to be had here, I think it would be Houston at plus 210 or Iowa State at plus 650. Those would be what I would look at here. Iowa State is definitely capable of beating Arizona. I mean, we've seen Arizona lose to some of the real upper echelon teams here. Like they've lost to some of the better teams here. So, they could lose. Iowa State would have to get through them, though, which is dangerous. Houston, looks like it's pretty likely they at least get to the championship game. So, Houston might be the way I would look at this conference. And like I said, under Sampson, they've shown some motivation to try to get through the conference tournament here. Last year, I think they got bounced a little bit early in the tournament too. So maybe they have a little bit of motivation to redeem themselves from that. They also play a super slow style, and they play defense, and that's good in a tournament environment. It's helpful when you're playing multiple games in a row. Like the fast-paced teams are the teams that usually run out of steam more so than the slow teams. So that's something to be aware of there as well. Iowa State also happens to be a fairly slow team as well, so something to keep in mind there. So is Texas Tech. Arizona is not. So, yeah, something to keep in mind as far as that is concerned. Kansas plays somewhat slow as well. So does TCU. BYU is one of the faster teams. So is UCF. All right. Yeah, I think I've gone through it all. So, yeah, that's the way that I see it, man. I think Arizona won't win this conference tournament, to be honest. Yeah, I think it will actually be either Houston or Iowa State. So, that's how I look at it, and that's gonna do it, man. Yeah. All right. So that's it for the conference tournament videos from me, man. Learn to Toad on Instagram. Learn to Toad on Twitter. Check it all out. Like, subscribe. Give me good replies on the channel here. Listen on audio as well. Review on audio. Apple, Spotify. That all helps me out. Covered in Uke is my ukulele channel on YouTube. Patreon.com/LearnToToad. You can support me there. And Losercast will be back tomorrow night with a new episode as well. That's going to do it. I appreciate it, guys. Peace.